Let's get out of this city.
Need optimum break.
The Transformers, everyone's favorite something or other. Look, I don't really know how to introduce something that everyone already knows about. I really don't need to sit here and explain to you what Transformers is. What I do want to get into though, however, is how Transformers is unique culturally due to one specific reason. See, we live in an age where being a part of any fandom is going to come with some baggage. There's always something going on in the fandoms of basically any piece of media, and even though 90% of the people in the fandom are normal, the other 10% tend to drag the whole thing down. To where now, if you're a proud fan of something, you're going to be labeled as like a weirdo, or an incel, or a racist, or whatever the fuck else fans of that franchise manage to get up to at conventions. Transformers, however, is the one fandom that I belong to where I never really feel like I'm expected to explain myself. I'm not ashamed of any of the things I like, though Transformers is the one where I'm not really going to get any odd looks. And that is because the Transformers fandom, for the most part, is extremely pleasant. TFCon LA was one of the best conventions I've been to, and a huge part of this is because of how great the community is. Yes, there's going to be some problem people here and there, just like any other fandom, but those people usually find themselves shunned from the fandom and community at some point or another. No, the plight of Transformers isn't its fan base, but rather the fact that the franchise belongs to two rather abusive parents. Takara, Tommy, and Hasbro. For those who don't know, the Transformers in the US is technically a combination of two licensed series from Japan, those being Microchange and Diaclone, both of those being produced by the company Takara. And when Hasbro brought those two toy lines over across the Pacific, they were combined into the single toy line called the Transformers. And so Transformers has kind of been this on and off collaborative effort. Sometimes they both are working together on the franchise, and sometimes they're sort of doing their own thing. But the one constant that they always share is that whatever project they're working on, they can always find a way to fuck it up. And today, let's look at some of the Transformers' low moments. So let's talk toys. CPS and GPS, two plagues of the Transformers toy lines. Now, in this instance, CPS and GPS does not stand for Child Protective Services and Gallagher-Gective Gurgises, but rather Clear Plastic Syndrome and Gold Plastic Syndrome. Clear Plastic Syndrome refers to how clear plastic is often just more fragile than other plastics, so any parts on the toy that are clear will wear down and break more easily. This can be a pain in the ass because Hasbro likes to do this thing where they make hinges and joints clear, and so you will just have arms falling off of things. Gold Plastic Syndrome is the one that you hear talked about far more, and is more of an actual issue. Also, this one is actually Hasbro and Takara's fault. So this isn't exclusive to just gold plastic, but it can really affect any type of metallic plastic. When these toys are being produced, to get the metallic color, they mix the colored dye into the plastic, just like any other color. However, with these metallic dyes, for some reason, it is believed that when the plastic was molded and dried, it didn't bond as well as it did with the other dyes. This means there are lots of air pockets in the plastic, meaning it deteriorates a lot faster. Over time, gold plastic becomes extremely brittle, and in extreme instances, will simply crumble into pieces. Some toys have this so bad that you can literally just crush them to dust in your hand. This problem also affects certain types of brown plastics as well. There is a specific Transformers toy named Toe Knuckle. That's a lie, I just made that name up, but I know for a fact you 100% believe that there was really a Transformer named Toe Knuckle. No, this Transformer is actually named Randy, and no, that one is not a joke, that's his actual name. Randy is one of the worst victims of GPS. You know that video of the gold Transformer being crushed? Yeah, that's him. But Randy has another big problem. You see, our dear old Randy is an auto-transforming toy. What that means is that the toy is spring-loaded, and you simply flip a switch to release the springs, and all of the parts fling into place, turning the toy into its robot mode. Randy is solid gold. Are you seeing the problem? And what makes it worse is that if you get your hands on a brand new one, the toy is packaged in its animal mode, meaning all of the springs are currently engaged. So a Randy toy, in its box, is essentially just a loaded gun that's waiting to be set off and explode into a billion tiny pieces. This has made toy collecting kind of a pain in the ass as the years have gone on, because, like, I grew up with Transformers Armada, but trying to collect a complete Armada set feels like a fool's errand, as a bunch of toys just have small random parts made up of gold or brown that are just waiting to crumble into dust the moment the eBay seller hands them over to USPS. The Michael Bay Transformers movies. Ooh boy. So this series has done a good job of making the general public's respect for the franchise hit an all-time low, but they were also widely popular, so much so that some people don't even realize that the franchise exists outside of these movies. Now, I like the first movie. It has some glaring imperfections, but I legitimately think it's a decent movie. The rest of them, however, Dark of the Moon was neat, I guess. Yeah, while these movies aren't exactly known for their quality, there is a certain charm as a Transformers fan seeing what classic Transformer character's name they will glue onto these fucking completely busted designs. I hate most of the live-action designs. I like pretty much all of them from the first movie, but as it went on, I started to like them less and less. And then we hit Transformers Age of Extinction. I hate Optimus Prime's design in this movie, and in The Last Night, but that's neither here nor there. What I do want to talk about is probably the most awkward part in this entire movie, though. So, in Transformers Age of Extinction, Mark Wahlberg plays the main character, who is named Cade Yeager, which somehow manages to be the stupidest name ever in a franchise that has characters named Party Wallop and Spaceship Bruce. And his character has a daughter who is 17. Now, the actress isn't 17, but the character is, and despite that, the movie really takes its time to make sure everyone really sees as much of her bits as possible. This isn't really new to the series. Michaela, who is played by Megan Fox, her and Shia LaBeouf's character Sam are both high schoolers in the first movie, and Megan Fox is pretty sexed up that entire movie too. Michael Bay seems to have this insistence of using underage characters to make sure everyone has boners while watching these movies about toy cars, but Age of Extinction really takes that ball and runs with it, with a scene that gave most people watching it a goddamn aneurysm. So, Miss Marky Mark Jr. is 17, and her boyfriend in that movie is 20. Yes, a 20-year-old is banging a high schooler. Obviously, there's a problem here, so Mr. Inventor himself,
I'm an inventor.
Cade Yeager, questions this, and what follows is a scene of the boyfriend, aka the legal adult, pulling out this laminated card out of his wallet. Now keep in mind, he has this in his wallet, meaning he carries it around to show people on a moment's notice. On this card is the Texas Romeo and Juliet clause, which is a law that legally allows him to have sex with children. This is a movie about cars that turn into robots and then punch each other, whose entire purpose for existing is to sell toys to kids. It also has like 100 billion hour long runtime. Like, cut this out and just make both of them 18. What the fuck is any of this doing in here? Also, from what I understand, this is actually wrong. The law doesn't actually allow the situation that's presented in the movie to actually be legal. So there you go. One of our three heroes is a statutory rapist. Good job, everybody. Speaking of which, okay. So I'm gonna do my best to explain this one off the top of my head because it's a little all over the place. So it's 2006, and the Unicron trilogy is wrapping up. Hasbro has its own plan for what's coming next, so Takara kinda has to figure out what direction the franchise will be going over in Japan. Now, Takara wants to expand the franchise to new audiences and decides to focus their sights on the otaku. Yes, Takara decided that Transformers needed to appeal to the most extreme of anime and manga fans and got to work creating their next big moves in that direction. So, Transformers is first and foremost a toy line, and around 2003 we got Transformers Alternators. See, the Unicron trilogy, starting with Transformers Armada, moved away from name brand vehicles and moved towards just generic sports cars and planes and military vehicles and things like that. With Alternators, the franchise was taken back to having actual name brand vehicles, and the purpose of the line would be to have highly detailed model cars that would then obviously transform. And it was from this toy line that Takara birthed forth into this godforsaken world, Transformers Kiss Players. The Kiss Players toys were essentially alternator toys that came with a human companion. A very specific kind of human companion. Alongside the toy line was a radio drama as well as a 3-chapter manga run. And what was Kiss Players about? Well, Kiss Players takes place between the original Transformers the movie and season 3 of the TV show, where Rodimus and the Autobots find themselves on Earth once again to team up with little girls. The core concept of the series is that certain girls are gifted with the power of Kiss Players, meaning that if they kiss their Transformer companion, they can combine with them to fight off Dick Tongue Galvatron. So conceptually, the series I think is fine. However, the series is presented with a very specific audience in mind, with the manga basically just being a bunch of naked little girls being tortured and sprayed with various liquids. The manga itself is actually pretty violent. There's a lot of body horror. One character seemingly is ripped in half. Another time, someone's like being eaten. The Transformers wiki describes this as a magical girl horror series, so kind of similar to something like Madoka Magica. I can see where they're coming from with that, but I don't really know if I strictly agree with that. I would mostly only agree with that assessment because that does seem to be sort of the closest box that you can put it in. However, I refuse to put Madoka Magica, my favorite anime of all time, and this in the same ballpark as each other. The plot is kind of weird though, and even though Optimus Prime died in the original movie, for this series, his corpse is body snatched to be revived so that he can live the Alpha Bro podcast host's dream of kissing little girls and turning into a Dodge 1500. But one major misconception about the series is that the Kiss Players are all children. They're not. But this is probably only because of a technicality. See, the Kiss Players all drive their Autobot companions in their vehicle modes, so Takara wanted to make sure that they were all at least the minimum age to legally drive a car. And in Japan, the minimum legal age to drive anything outside of small motorcycles is 18. So yes, the Kiss Players are all legal adults. The main character, Atari, is 18. I believe the other two are 20, which gives this sort of the opposite problem of the Bay films. It's the 10,000-year-old vampire excuse. Despite their canon ages, it's very obviously an eroge lolly manga, and kind of a torture porn manga at some point. It's weird and uncomfortable, but strangely led to one of the most interesting pieces of Transformers fiction, because after Kiss Players crashed and burned, a sequel series did have a short run, where the 3 main characters form an idol group and end up on some space adventure thing. But what's notable about this is that A, the sexual content was toned down, and B, the series is probably the most deep-cut Transformers story ever written. The series dives deep into Transformers lore, and actually starts fixing the continuity and linking different series together, and it dives so deep into the franchise that it almost becomes this weird Transformers history lesson in the process. Also, the toy of Autotrooper and Atari comes with a Kremzeek toy, which Kremzeek is one of the most hated Transformers characters, so yeah, I'm sure that did a great job gaining Takara some goodwill for this series. Chris McFeely has a really good video breaking all this down into detail. Check that out because I'm done talking about this. Okay, last one. There's a lot more stuff I can get into, but I'm going to end it here with the Hasbro-Activision relationship. This one is far more short and very simple. So Hasbro for a while had a contract with Activision to publish some Transformers video games. It was from this deal that we got the amazing War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron games. And also Darkspark, but we don't talk about that one. They also published pretty much all of the movie games, which are all pretty hit or miss, but those War for Cybertron games are really where it's at. They're amazing shooters that go through the story of the Cybertronian Civil War and Cybertron's eventual fall as the Autobots are forced to flee the planet. They have great action, the controls and shooting feels phenomenal, transforming from robot to vehicle is seamless and always feels great, and I highly recommend playing these games. But Hasbro doesn't. So eventually, the contract with Activision was over, which means no more Activision games. Boo, whatever. At least we have these games they already made. See, that's the thing. I don't know the details, but for whatever reason, once the contract ended, all versions of these games were pulled from stores. That means all of the digital versions of the Xbox and PlayStation online stores were now not available. meaning now there was no way to legally play these games other than buying the physical copies on eBay. Yeah, and people wonder why I'm not a fan of the all-digital direction we've been heading in. People have been begging forever to remaster these games, or even just port them to the newest consoles. There was even rumors going around that the reason why this can never happen is because Activision lost source code for the games, making them lost forever, so the only way we'd get any type of re-release was for them to just completely rebuild the games from the ground up. But no, that's not even true. It was stated that Activision absolutely has the code and knows where it is. They just can't do anything with it. Hasbro is the holdout here. For whatever reason, they're refusing to contract with Activision again to re-release these games. Fuck you, Hasbro. I want to play Escalation again.